Yes, so we're talking today about total addressable market. Um, but yeah, there are definitely very interesting things happening in the world of regulation, taxation. I think we'll probably do a webinar soon on things like something around sourcing intelligence because I think a lot of people are going to be looking for different sources for their uh, um, component parts going forward, and a lot of change, rapid change happening there. So, yeah, I don't know whether it'll be the next one, but probably there'll be a webinar in the next shortly on sourcing intelligence and how we can go about finding appropriate suppliers in different geographies, etc.
All right, let's get started. Um, 17 people here today. Welcome, everyone. We're very thrilled to have you back and some of you to freshly join us for the first time or the second time for our webinar on the series of Total Addressable Market or TAM. I am Soumya and we have Oliver Guirdham, the CEO of the Business Research Company with us. And because of our very enthusiastic demand of the previous webinar on TAM, we decided to dig deeper on TAM and understand the methods, the mistakes, and the use cases of TAM better, specifically moving towards understanding forecasting and the applications of the information that you'll be collecting. So let's kick things off with a quick refresher and what exactly is TAM and how it is different from SAM and so on. So, Oliver, would you like to start? And then we can get it.
Um, well, I think yeah. Just one thing before you run through these first couple of slides is today there's an exercise, so there will be a bit of participation required from people. So yes, no pressure. You don't have to read out your answers. There's it's not an exam, but we're going to do a couple of exercises just to help you think through how you go about doing a TAM assessment.
All right, Oliver, very excited for the exercises. Now let's start with the basics. Let's start by understanding what is TAM or Total Addressable Market. So when I say TAM, it talks about the total revenue opportunity you or your product or service might have in the market. And if you are to achieve a total 100% market share in a particular market, but of course, that is not in the realistic world, how much of that market would you capture? So to understand TAM, first thing is for you to understand how much of it can you capture and what's the maximum potential of your product or service within the global market. And then in order to understand why it matters, it helps you connect deeper and better with your consumer because you understand, okay, this is how much I can expand and enter into the market. And it helps you make better decisions, devise better strategies, and then helps your business's growth towards a more balanced manner. Next slide, please. So there are three ways to calculate TAM, and that's what we dug deep into the last webinar. And I'll again summarize the 3 points for us. So there's a top-down approach, bottom-up approach, and the value theory approach. So the top-down approach is, of course, based on existing market data and understanding what's available to you, and then utilizing that information for your products and service. Then, for the bottom up approach, we go the other way around. We look at the potential customers and the average revenue per customer. So, here we calculate the actual sales data and then we scale it up for our potential market size. And then the third method, which is actually one of the most used methods, or actually the most um, applicable methods in the market. It's called the value theory approach. So you estimate the TAM utilizing the customer's willingness to pay for resolving a problem that is there within the market. You provide a solution that helps the customer ease their work, and then you understand how much a customer is willing to pay, and then you optimize the cost into and multiply it with the number of potential customers that you might have in the market. And one such example that you can understand is how much a product that provides any AI solutions can help out a customer, and how much is the customer willing to pay for that solution that you're offering within the market. Once you multiply both the things, you'll get the total addressable market of your product or service. Yes, so Oliver will add to it with a couple of examples.
Yeah, if you just go back to the previous slide, Soumya. So yeah, so if you look at the top-down approach, that can be very useful. It's quick, um, but I guess the thing that you need to be aware of there is making sure that you understand where the information's come from, that you've done your own, that your provider is giving sourcing and justification for their numbers. The bottom-up approach, I guess, is the kind of traditional approach, and it's probably the most widely applied, certainly for established markets where you can kind of really get a grip on, and you've got an ARPU, you've got an idea of how much people are generally spending on this and what the current population using it or customer base is using a product. But yeah, so in that situation, it's a very useful tool. And then yeah, value theory is particularly, as Somi was saying, for something new and something where maybe you're not so clear on the potential penetration in the market. So then you need to start thinking about like who would find the product or service valuable, and what would they be willing to spend on it. Good. Next slide, please, Soumya. So I'm going to giving a couple of examples. So this kind of analysis is used a lot in healthcare. It's got another name which I've forgotten. Well, it's sort of sometimes called population-based market sizing. Sometimes it's prevalence-based analysis. The good thing in healthcare markets is that you tend to have good data for the addressable market for the of people who have a particular need, because that is essentially the prevalence rate of a particular disease or condition. So if you think about, breast cancer, if you're producing a drug for a particular type of breast cancer, you can get very accurate information about the prevalence of that disease in the population, right? How many people have it at a given time. You can also get incidence, which is the new the new cases each year. But generally here we will be looking at the prevalence. So the prevalence, the total number of diagnosed patients in the target population, and then to turn that into the addressable market, you take the percentage and times it by the total population. Then then you look at the adoption rate, the percentage of patients using a particular drug, product, or service. But in fact, in order to get the TAM, you would stop at the second point and look at prevalence time population size times cost of treatment, which is the bit that we perhaps missed here, is putting in the cost of treatment. So if it's 0.5% of the population, of 100 million, it's 500,000 people, and the cost per year is $10,000, then that's whatever, $5 billion or something. Yeah, so in terms of the total addressable market, you stop at that point of um, uh, the addressable market times the cost, and then there are other elements like the SAM and the SOM that we're going to come to, where you go further in your analysis and you start looking at, yes, okay, that's the whole market for this product or service, but what proportion are actually um, available to me, right? Which ones of those can I address, and which ones of those can I persuade to pick up on to utilize my product or service, which is of course the end game of all this. Um, yeah, so that would be a healthcare example. Moving on to a consumer example. Next slide. So here again, fairly straightforward. There's the target population. Identify the demographic, geographic scope for potential users. Estimate the penetration rate. Now here the penetration rate is less widely available. Or sorry, the target population is less widely available. So whereas in a healthcare market where there are good quality prevalence numbers available, the target population in many other markets is much more you need to do some research on, and there's room for discussion and thinking about it, right? About how you define that target population. It's basically anyone who's got the money and the potential need for your product, right? Or the potential interest or in your product, but it doesn't mean that they're necessarily already interested in your product or service. Doesn't mean that they prefer your approach to other types of products or services that could address the same need. Certainly doesn't mean that they're choosing you over your competitors. But if you think of something, we're going to do an example on the coffee market shortly. You know, um, you need to be quite clear about how you define that target market. Is it just anybody who likes coffee and has the money to buy it, or would you consider it to be people who already use coffee shops on a regular basis, or or thinking that through is important. But the general rule is that the TAM should be on a broad basis. So you're really looking at anyone who has the potential at this stage. They all they really need to have is a potential unmet need. Whether they're switched on to it, whether they're aware of it at the moment, whether they're engaged in it is another matter. And also the financial ability to potentially buy it, right? There's no point in including people within your your potential target market who are just, there's no point in a Mercedes-Benz having, you know, very poor people in their target market, right? They're never going to be able to buy them. Um, uh, yes. So then, taking the ARPU, the regular spend, um, uh, uh, and then a straightforward calculation of the target population times the penetration rate gives the ARPU, times the ARPU, gives the TAM. Next slide, please. Um, Common mistakes that people make when they estimate TAM. Uh, so overestimating TAM, I would say this is almost overestimating SAM or SOM. So the TAM is the broad view, but whether your company can actually address that need is another matter. So it might be the right number for the TAM, but when you come to the SAM or the SOM that we'll look at shortly, that might be a much lower number that you can realistically address as your business. Ignoring market segmentation, that's definitely a common thing. Really boring down into the specific niche that you're interested in will make your marketing strategy and your organizational strategy stronger. And it will also give you a more realistic TAM, and it will stop you from kind of tearing your hair out thinking, oh, this is I think you quite often hear this in business meetings. This is, we're told this is a $10 billion opportunity, how comes we can't get $10 million out of it, right? Well, let's get down to what actually is the real opportunity for your business in order to set yourself some kind of realistic goals. Use of outdating data. Things move fast. Emerging trends, technological changes. They all change what's going on very quickly. So having the latest data, and of course, I would say having a strong data partner who can work with you on it, like the Business Research Company. But yeah, staying up to date is definitely a key focus. Misjudging the customer's willingness to pay. Yeah, yes, I think this is quite a common mistake, particularly when you get to see these very high estimates for new and emerging markets, right? You can easily do a set of calculation that times is the population or multiplies the population um, by the most that anyone will possibly pay for this product or service, or the most that's been seen being paid, and coming up with a huge number. But how many people realistically have the ability and the willingness to pay? And then again, this is more a matter of SAM and SOM, because market saturation wouldn't really come into the overall TAM number. But in terms of estimating your own potential, you need to understand that there's competition in the market, and that a lot of that competition is established. A lot of customers may have loyalties, etc. So again, you're not necessarily going to be able to uh, take huge share of market share from some competitors. Realistically, you have to accept that some of those customers are out of reach, or at least out of reach in the short term. Next slide. Okay, so here we have this is drawing the sort of TAM part to a close. So I wanted you to try and think through an example um, for to do a quick estimation yourself, and I'll be asking someone to come back and whoever's ready to give their estimation. So we want you to do that basic calculation. Proportion of the market that is relevant times ARPU, times population times ARPU. So the percentage of people who, so in this case, we're looking at the coffee shop market in the US, right? People who go to, so we're talking about things like Starbucks, um, Costa Coffee in the UK, the Black Sheep Coffee, etc. So drinking premium coffee from a coffee shop. And I want you to, we'll give you a couple of minutes. You can use Google, you can use AI to quickly come up with a high-level TAM estimate for the coffee shop market in the US. So a couple of questions that you might want to ask yourself. What demographic groups are in the target market for coffee. So is it everybody? Um, uh, is it are there any is it more applicable to men than women? Probably not, I wouldn't say, but you can put you can come back on that. Is it applicable to particular age groups? Perhaps that's more important, right? Um, what proportion of people actually, have an unmet need, as in they have an interest in and preference for these type of products? What proportion of people can afford to drink coffee from a coffee shop, right? A lot of people who like coffee may not drink coffee from coffee shops regularly because it's a pretty premium experience. And how much do users typically spend on coffee shop coffee per month? Um, so yes, I'm going to give you uh, uh, 3 or 4 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, to do a quick calculation. As I said, you can either just base it on your assumptions and knowledge. We're not going to be going into what the right answer is. Or you can use any tools you like, Google AI, etc., to help you with this. Okay, so I'll give you a couple of minutes, and then we'll ask someone to come back. Anyone who's wants to can run us through their calculation.
Right, while everyone's calculating. Oliver, I would like to highlight that understanding the most common mistakes while calculating TAM was one of our most requested pieces of content from our previous webinar. And I feel like understanding that, understanding a piece of content is okay. Like you get a lot of information, but I've have an experienced person talk to me about the common mistakes that I can make about doing a new thing is something that's worth learning, and an experienced person would give you inputs from their personal experience and how much they learned while working on a potential topic. So, if you would like to add to some of the mistakes that you have faced or you've understood while working recently with the business research company's projects.
Um, uh, I mean, we never make mistakes. I don't know what you mean. Um,
Being realistic, what were the
um,
hurdles that you faced while deciding the TAM, SAM, and SOM for a potential customer, or say in one of your recent projects?
um, I think, yeah, I think I've kind of run through I think those are quite accurate in the ones that were highlighted in terms of the type of things that go wrong. And as I said, I think, across the market, across media, etc., there's a great tendency to overestimate, to come up with kind of wildly high numbers for new products and services, um, uh, and to mistake to mistake the TAM for a realistic forecast or projection of the market size in the short term, right? The TAM will always be much bigger than the current market size, let alone your potential sales, right? As an individual
Of course,
company.
yeah.
But
Hmm.
yeah, so I think people kind of utilize that confusion to some extent in the way they communicate, because they like putting big numbers in presentations and telling investors, oh, this is a $20 billion opportunity. But you know, there's a huge gap between the TAM for something and the current market. There's a lot of boundaries to get over between um, TAM and actual market size, and we'll go through that a bit more in a second when we talk about the market onion, the different layers that between the two things, and what's required to move TAM, potential addressable market into actual market, how to move um, uh, a person with an unmet need or a potential client with an unmet need to an actual customer. And that's a reason why TAM is so important, because it really focuses the mind of the marketing challenge of moving people through these different stages.
Of course, funneling it down to further and
Yeah, yeah.
understanding your persona to the perfect T.
Yes, exactly. Um, good. So where are we? Who is ready to talk us through their estimation? Come on, brave souls.
Hi, good
We
morning. This
don't
is
have,
Wilkins Key. I think
yeah,
I'll give it a shot here.
Okay,
Um,
of
great.
course.
Thank you.
yeah, don't crucify me. I'm stepping out here. So
No, absolutely not.
okay, so I'll kind of walk through this and tell me where I may veer off course or so. But I'm thinking, in terms of the demographic groups, I looked at the total adult population of the United States at
Yeah,
258 million.
yeah,
I kind of just took a swag that said roughly 68% of those drink coffee. That gives me
yes.
175 million for my proportion of people that like coffee.
Mm,
Um, Another swag that said 30% of those folks would buy coffee in a coffee shop.
right.
So that brings me down to 53 million. Average cup of coffee in the United States is $3 per cup,
Yeah,
assuming that people go at least 15 times a month. That's $45 per month.
yeah.
Um, that doesn't count into, I'm still at the point where I can't figure out market share or
Yeah,
what
no,
proportion
that's
would be
just
attributed to me.
we're just talking about the TAM at the moment. Yeah, the
Okay.
addressable market. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's fine. So did that give you what was the number that came out of that?
Um, in terms of, I would take that $45 and multiply it times the 53 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, my calculator on my phone won't go that high. Um, I guess that's something like $200 million or so, or a little more than that,
Oh, I
maybe
think much more than that. I think it's
much
in
more
the
than that. Yeah,
billions. Yeah,
So it
yeah.
yeah,
would
it's
be
still early
around
here in the States. So.
2.475 million to 2.4 billion. Yes,
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
2.4
yeah.
billion. Yeah.
It's still
Yeah.
early here in the States, and I'm only on my first cup of coffee. So,
But it's a yeah, it just shows what a huge opportunity, obviously. As long as you can import the coffee. But
right.
yes. Um, but yes, so that's it. Yeah, it should be providing, it should be producing big numbers. Not, obviously it depends on the market, but generally speaking, yeah, this is the broadest extent of the market as it stands on the given day, the current snapshot. So you'd expect it to be big numbers, and then we'll talk through now a bit about how those numbers get refined down further. I'm sorry, I'm struggling slightly. My charger's having a problem here. Good. So let's move on to the next slide.
This is quite a key slide in understanding how to move ahead from your, ambitious number. Well, I think that's where your number would get down to more niche or market size, and this is where you'll be able to understand how TAM, your total addressable market, can be moved or funneled down into the serviceable available market, and finally further funnel down into serviceable obtainable market. That is your most realistic market share. So I would say, imagine this, not imagine, it's exactly a pyramid, an inverted pyramid, a funnel, where at the top is your TAM, the total addressable market. It is your dream scenario without any competition, with the global demand being balanced, no trade wars going on for anything else, and your products and services have 100% market share, and there is no competition at all. It's a blue sky, and you give it a full potential and get a full opportunity from it. But TAM alone does not make you stand in the market. That would be an unrealistic situation. So there you go. And then you look at your SAM, which is your serviceable available market. And that is slightly more realistic proportion of the TAM. So there you go and look at how much can you target based on your product's fit, looking at the geographies, looking at, the competition that is there, people's ability to pay for your product, your pricing model, the regulatory environment, and it practically starts making sense to you on how much can you spend. Then if you moved on further beyond that, beyond SAM, you actually get to look at the most realistic share of your market where you experience the actual revenue generation potential for your product or service. And that's based on what your company can realistically capture, considering the competition, the execution, the strength of the brand, and your other go-to marketing strategies, and how customized or the tailored your strategies are based upon the numbers that you've calculated, the study that you have done for your competition. How have you analyzed the geographies that you're entering into? What are the drivers? What are the restraints? What are the trends within the particular geographies? How would you implement those upcoming opportunities, and how would you frame your strategies, whether it be, say, keeping up with the player adopted strategies or looking at the trend based strategies? How will you frame yours is where you stand out, and is where, you need a good data provider or a service market intelligence provider. And that's where, I would like to say it in a manner where SOM, or a serviceable obtainable market, is where your ambitions meet your execution. That's where you hold your hands with your product and exactly understand what can you do to the best of your capability. Yes, Oliver, I think you should add to it with an example.
Yeah, I just think so. Yeah, if we think of TAM is the wide open blue sky. SAM, you're coming to you're narrowing it down to markets that you're actually focusing on and addressing. And then SOM is really, your capabilities, right? So that's when you get into saying, okay, we don't have the footprint. Do we have enough coffee shops in enough places to realistically win that customer? No. So what are the customers that so if we think of the coffee shop, TAM is coffee shop customers worldwide. SAM is coffee shop customers in the geographies and locations and type of customer that we're focusing on. So SAM is like thinking right in on us. What can we realistically escalate? Who can we service? And then what proportion of that market can we realistically target against our competitors? So it gets more and more focused in onto you and your so TAM, total market, SAM, your market, SOM, your target, I guess you would almost say. Great. Next slide. Next slide talks about something similar, I guess, in a slightly different way, and hopefully clarifies the thinking around this, which is, I think, the onion. I'm hoping Soumya is the next one that comes. So go back to the previous slide. Is this the next slide? Okay, I think we're going to skip this for now, Soumya. We might come back to it at the end, but it's another exercise where we actually go through to calculating the SAM and the SOM. But I think we're running a little bit short of time, and we might send this to people, or they'll have access to it and they can look through it, and we'll be very open to reviewing anything that people send in on that, and I'll just talk through the exercise at the end as well if people want to do it. So now the famous onion, right? So just clarifying the way that we're thinking about TAM. So the total addressable market is all the people who have an unmet need for a product or service and can afford it, right? And what we're trying to do is push people through this from one stage in through the onion, right? So this is how TAM really meets up with your marketing strategy. So um, uh, what um, what do you need to get people from that situation, that they have a potential unmet need and a potential to meet that need with your product or service, but they might not even at this stage they might not be aware that they've got that they've got a need. So for instance, in healthcare markets, when you talk about the prevalence market, the prevalence of a disease doesn't mean that people know they've got that disease, right? So the first step can just be you might have 2 million people with a disease or certain things like, high blood pressure and things. People often don't know that they've got it. So the first step is awareness. They're never going to become customer for your blood pressure product if they're not aware that they've got high blood pressure, right? So awareness, and then engaging with that problem, and then prioritizing that problem. They might. So awareness is knowing that they've got an unmet need. Engagement is starting to think of it about it. Prioritization is actually being moved to do something about it, right? And so those are the questions that you're asking as a marketeer about when you're thinking about how to move someone from the outer circle, the TAM, in through the circles. Um, the so the next stage um, uh, is people who I think that the labeling is slightly wrong here, but people who want or need the service um, and can afford it. So yeah, it's next stage is getting people to actually want the service to so they're not only aware that they've got a need, but they're aware of the solution to that need, and you've created a preference for for the type of solution that you offer, right? Um, so if the problem is not knowing the time of what time it is, or lack of time awareness, there are many different solutions to that. It could be mobile phones, it could be reminders on people's smart devices, etc. But if you're trying to sell them um, uh, um, a Rolex watch, you need to create the preference for that type of solution, and then move them towards the adoption of that type of solution. And then the next stage is so then you've got them focused in on your product or service, the product or service you offer. But then the final step is to get them aware of your offering, to understand its differentiation, um, and to push them to have a preference for that and to adopt it. So these are all the different stages that you're looking to move people through to get them from the broadest view of the that your potential market to to an actual customer for you. And that's why TAM, the thinking behind TAM, is very linked in with your marketing thinking and your marketing funnel. Next slide. Um, we use TAM in slightly different ways as we go along. As we've just shown in that example, a well-defined TAM helps businesses develop scalable strategies by understanding the total potential demand and then breaking it down further. In early stage startups, identifying the right TAM ensures efficient resource allocation, helping starters focus on attainable markets before scaling. So again, thinking about the difference between the TAM, the SAM, and the SOM, thinking about the onion of opportunity there. Growth stage companies, so a bit further down the line, guides market penetration strategies by showing how much growth potential remains, both for their overall product and for their offerings specifically. Customer adoption curves. As we've seen, adoption within customers is critical to a strong TAM analysis, and then this should be driving into and helping people to adjust their business strategy. Next slide. Some niche and new opportunities within TAM. As everywhere else, AI is playing an increasing role here. AI helps uncover deeper insights by looking at large data sets, etc. And it's also, as we've seen in that exercise, it's a very good tool for quick estimation. But in order to, while those kind of coffee shop exercises are useful, that for understanding, that's not the way to really build a strategy. An in-depth study, surveys, talking to leading companies, leading competitors, leading experts, or working with a research provider to go through that process is the way to get and then combining that with the use of AI is the way to get a really strong strategy. If you get, it doesn't matter how good the analysis and the AI is, if your basic data is wrong, you're always going to be on the wrong path. So it's rubbish in, rubbish out with research is the critical thing. And then developing stronger customer personas is another thing that can come out of this, is really thinking about who are the target market for my product. What is the addressable market, and then how many of them are at different stages? How many of them have got an unmet need but they don't even know it? How many of them are aware of the unmet need but they're aware of other solutions to my solution? How many of them are aware of my solution but not aware of me as a competitor, etc.? What point are they at? Some examples of companies that have used TAM or in this case SOM, so they've been looking at their own specific to develop their opportunities. So this is how they've expanded what the market that they can really address. So Netflix uses AI powered recommendation engines to personalize content suggestions by analyzing and viewing habits. Netflix suggests segments. Netflix is able to segment its audience into very specific groups. So and then it optimizes its the market that it can really focus on by improving customer engagement and retention. Nike leverages AI athlete endorsements, AI-driven athlete endorsements, and digital engagement data to target niche sports communities.
One thing I would like to add over here, Oliver,
Sure.
that is Nike has done quite a good job understanding its SOM per geography. So they have these hyper specific products that are gender based, then they are gender based, then they're geography based, and then they're also age based, that uses a combination of characteristics which utilizes TAM understanding. And then it has made products which are either commonly used by women or women who want to who like running, who like training, and who like to be just aesthetic Pilates girls. They have offerings for such personas as well. So trying to enter your market where your TAM is always evolving, specifically understanding how to utilize your niche or opportunities with the trends that keep on coming. Like the example that I gave for the Pilates girls, it's a very trending thing in the market right now within social media, and the company was able to come up with the products for that, with the colors, with the offerings that people are looking for within that extremely niche sector. It was something that requires continuous effort and evolution in order for you to match up with the demand in the market. Yeah.
Great. Good. Yeah, I think that's fine. Next slide, please. And then nearly lastly, we're just going to look a little bit at forecasting TAM forward. So TAM is a snapshot of where you are at the moment of the total addressable market at a given time, but obviously it changes over time. And things that can change it are anything that can. So if you think about the way that we've calculated it, who's interested in using it, or who's got an unmet need for it, and how much are people willing to spend on it. Anything that moves the needle on in either of those areas will potentially change the forecast TAM. Technological disruptions, so new technologies that broaden either the number of people who could use it or the depth of use and the value of the use, and therefore how much people might be willing to spend on it, can change the TAM. Regulatory changes can change the TAM, particularly in things like, healthcare. Anything, a change in regulation could reduce or increase the addressable market for a particular treatment radically, right? Whether something is approved or not. And then economic shifts, demographic shifts, etc., will change market sizes. And not always up, by the way. We have to be aware of the fact that I think there's a tendency again in market research to always be forecasting things up or thinking about growth. A lot of markets have got declining populations now, and particularly declining specific segments in their population. The youth market in many of these countries is declining and going to decline fast in the future. Yeah. So yeah, when you're forecasting, you've got to think about how will the addressable market change and how will the ARPU change, the two things separately. So it could be population change, income change. So are there more people coming into the income group that could potentially purchase this product or service? And how might the unmet need change? Might there be more people with the specific needs? So, again, looking at older people, let's say there might be an increasing people with an unmet need for stair mobility, right? If your product or service is a stair lift, the number of people who have that need is probably going to be increasing fairly strongly in the future, and therefore the TAM's increasing. And then ARPU change, inflation, value adds, and technology changes, but also utilization changes. There are changes in lifestyle, etc., that would mean, and then the one that I've missed off here is income changes, or like people's expenditure and wealth changes. So if your customers are getting richer, they're probably going to be willing to spend more on it in the future. If they're getting poorer, they're going to spend less on it. But also, if their potential use cases have expanded, they may be willing to spend more on it. Which is why, part of this is always looking for new ways that your existing customers increasing. And one of the things that TAM shows is how important increasing existing customer spend is, as opposed to just getting more of the potential people into your market, or as well as trying to get more of the potential people into your market. Next slide. Right, I think we're wrapping up a bit now, Soumya, and do you want to just go through some of the trends that we expect to see in TAM analysis?
Yes, so I think this is one of my favorite slides or the part of the TAM analysis because it keeps you up with the market. If you want to enter the market, you have to look ahead. You have to understand about the key three trends, which I mentioned over here, that are shaping the future of the TAM analysis as we move forward. And first of them is the AI driven market research. So now, as we know, research is not just based on manual efforts. We have, of course, integrated AI. But how have we done that? We have moved from manually collecting data to, having robots do that for us. But that's not just it. We have moved to predictive analysis, understanding how your customer might behave in different situations. We have moved to real-time data collection and data analysis, which is very critical in understanding the dynamics of your particular market. Then we have moved to AI-generated insights, which is an extremely important step in integrating your work, your market intelligence with AI. Why? Because it can help your business respond to market changes faster and more accurately. And it helps you integrate the exact time and the phase where you can enter or interfere with your customers' choices. Then, second point about sustainability and ESG factors that are becoming central to the TAM assessments is because of the consumer preferences and the regulatory shifts. We are living in an era of regulatory shifts for the last 1.5 weeks, and we are moving towards different solutions. So right now we can see, I do not have an active example for sustainability, but we can see that we are moving towards greener solutions, and they're reshaping our existing markets, and they are they're making us move towards solutions that are sustainable. And you have to evolve, and you have to see that, okay, this is the change which I will be required to make, and you need to make your change and the decision at a time where your market information is changing. Then finally, this is, I think, one of the most important pieces. Five is we are in a very big red ocean most of the time, until unless you create your own blue ocean and do something that's not just competitive benchmarking, you would not be able to make a difference now. Like, everybody has access to same resources, everybody can leverage the same vital levers that you can, but at the same time, what are you doing different? How are you leveraging that one particular trend within the market that companies are identifying, and looking at the unmet needs of the customers or the potential audience that is for your product and service? And how are you differentiating boldly, shifting your industry or integrating with different norms in the industry, so that you open up new demand areas? You do not just depend upon the demand areas, but you open up newer opportunities for your business. So I think understanding your blue ocean strategy and making it for yourself should be a priority, along with competitive benchmarking all of the time. And I think these are the three top trends within the TAM analysis that one should always be on the lookout for. Next slide, please. All right, so we are wrapping up now, and to wrap up, we'll be talking about how can we use TAM effectively. Now that we have learned what is TAM, how do you calculate TAM, how do you further drill down into understanding your SAM and your SOM. So now we'll move on to concluding everything and gelling it together. So using TAM effectively is more than just measuring your market size or, understanding your drivers and destiny. It's about how do you utilize that information strategically, implement it, and you become successful with the information. You don't just read the information, you process it further. So the most important companies identify and focus on the most obtainable and serviceable segments than just the total addressable market. That's where the money lies. You have to look at the bottom of the funnel to understand the actual addressable market for yourself. Serviceable, obtainable market, that is your SOM. Then they also provide potential customers through the TAM funnel, from awareness to loyalty, by constantly refining and understanding their market dynamics. So, like I said, and I talked about this within the trends, is that you have to evolve with the market dynamics. Things keep on changing, and we know that change is the only constant. So with change, you change. And once you go with that flow and keep on making changes with respect to the market and how it's behaving, you're never behind the trend, and you keep on understanding what you can do better to fight your competition and have the competitive edge. Then there is combining traditional market research with AI driven insights, ensuring accuracy. I cannot emphasize on this enough. This is an extremely important part for any business, because market research is something that a business has to do before it goes into, it runs, it starts, or even enters the market. If you do not understand your market, how are you going to understand your customer, right? So you have to understand what is your customer thinking, how are they behaving, what is the competitive landscape, what is the size by geography, what is going to be the next possible opportunity for you, and how do you strategize for it. And that's where the business research company, of very good quality deliverables, are provided by us, and we can help you out with that step. Then next step is that successful companies also stay very consistent and non-static, and they constantly look at coming up with newer products and innovations. How can they master the TAM analysis and empower themselves to make database decisions? They can also align their growth strategies with the data and the understanding that they are evolving and learning, and they stay competitive in the constantly changing environment. So sum it up all, you understand your TAM, you evolve, you learn, and you utilize the data that you obtain from a very good source. So yeah, that's how I would like to conclude. Oliver, would you like to add an example to it?
No, that's great. Thank you, Soumya. Thank you, everybody. Does anybody have any questions at this stage?
There's a question in the chat for discussing the example that we skipped through.
Oh, the example, yes. So this is the homework. Yeah. So we've done the TAM, which was like the total opportunity for coffee shop coffees in the US. Now you are the owner of Cafe Hero, which is a coffee shop chain, and it's looking to understand its potential market, and create realistic targets. It currently has a strong base in major European markets, whereas one of the top players, but competition is fierce, particularly in North America, with opportunities for growth in other areas. Regulatory and compliance issues make the MEA hard to access. So first of all, you need to create a TAM, but this time on a broader level, going a bit wider than just the US market, and thinking about the global TAM for coffee shop coffee. And then you need to break that down to the SAM and to the SOM. So first of all, to the SAM. So which markets can you realistically play in? Which markets have you got the capabilities? Where have you got the opportunity to compete? So you think through, for this coffee chain, where can it compete? And then right down into the SOM, what potential market share can it realistically target within those when it thinks about itself against its, realizing and accepting the fact that this is a competitive market and it's not going to get 100% market share by any means. So what is a realistic SOM for the company once you've understood what's the total addressable market, what's the market that it's in a position to really address, and then what's the market that it's got the potential to win within the overall market. So please have a think about that. I think it'll take a little bit longer than the last one. So I'm not going to ask people to answer right now, but what I would say is that anyone who wants to send in their thoughts on this to info@tbrc.info. Somebody will put that email address in the chat. We will be very happy to read through those, and we promise to come back to you with comments and feedback, etc. So feel free to have a look at that in your own time. And Soumya, do we have any updates on when the next webinar will be or what topic?
Yes, so our next webinar is actually very healthcare specific, but it does involve a lot of learning about how do you calculate the market information and how do you actually plan out your projects and understanding for the CRISPR market, CRISPR. It's scheduled on 30th of April, and I'll be rolling out the content and everything for it very soon. So it's almost 20 days from now. Be ready for it. If you want to enroll in advance, let me know. You can reach out to me or Oliver on LinkedIn. We are always waiting for your messages, and look out for the next webinar.
The next, yeah. So that's quite a specific topic in the healthcare market. The next in this generalist, um, in this sort of generalist series, will be we sort of do them around this time every month, right? So around early part of the month, and as I said, we haven't quite decided on the next topic yet, but it might well be something around sourcing and sourcing intelligence, because I think that's going to be a really big thing in the current circumstances. But you should get information on that. We post on LinkedIn, we send out emails, etc. And just contact us directly if you want to know any more. One more question was there, Soumya, about sending out the deck. Yes, I think we can do that, William, and we'll follow up with you.
Yes, of course. We do share the recording and the presentation. And just in case you have any questions, you can reach out to us thereafter.
Yeah, and thank you, Sanjeev, for the feedback. That's much appreciated. Great. Have a good rest of your day, and look forward to hopefully seeing you again in a month's time or so for the next session.
Thank you so much, everyone. Good day.
Thank you, everybody.